Hi guys, it's Alec here. So, running your business on items is one of the things that I think is very, very powerful, and just want to showcase you in a very simplistic kind of way how it can help you kind of like do things that you don't normally consider items for, like for instance, depreciation. Now, depreciation is one of those environments where we have to often create asset registers, and it sits outside of our standard accounting system, which should be run like an ERP system, and in our case here, Pastel, and that creates a lot of additional administration for a finance team to keep track of this asset register on an Excel format most of the times. So if we can treat that and we can deal with it within something like our ERP system, immediately we are ticking the box to make sure we are complying to the Companies Act, which means we have to have a asset register, and also we have the ability as shareholders to view our assets in a more detailed way. And then lastly, but most importantly, it's also not so administratively burdensome. And if you think about it later on, what's going to be nice is once you sell that item, you actually have the ability to sell it like you would sell an item, which means it auto creates your actual your profit and loss on sale of asset. All right, so let me show you how that's done. Firstly, let's pop over into Pastel. So here's our Pastel. This is a demo database. So I've created a few things here. Firstly, I've created a supplier, which is called asset. So this asset, this is my asset control supplier. Okay, so this is where I'm going to process my depreciation to. Right. I've also created an item called depreciation for specific types of assets. And you'll actually see it if you kind of like open it here. It's got this D at the end. So there's a accumulated depreciation for furniture and fittings and for computer expenses, which I'm actually going to deal with both in this specific instance. And the thing just to consider, what does items basically do for us? Items creates the ability to create a very long history, because it never disappears out of my history lines and history headers in my PSQL database. So it actually is it's there for 20 years if you want. Most people go and purge that data to make it a little bit smaller over time. Once you get too much data and you no longer need, let's say, more than 6-year-old data. But it's not the same as the transaction ledger table, which purges automatically after 5 years. So then what we also did is in the setup environment, go to the inventory, and in the inventory setup, there's something called integration groups. So what does that do? This basically tells each item what route it must follow to the trial balance. Okay, so if you go down here, you'll see we've created a little bit down the line here. We've created a group for depreciation, and it basically tells the route which it must follow when the item is either sold. Now, remember, depreciation is then also treated like a item that is saleable, because one day when you do get rid of the asset, you also want to get rid of the depreciation. So that goes to our profit and loss on sale of asset, and the adjustment and the cost of sale. The only thing that is not the same as this is in the inventory column. This is where my balance sheet accumulated depreciation goes to. Okay, so that 6250 is for computers accumulated depreciation, and 6350020 is for accumulated depreciation, furniture and fittings. Right. And then also we've created items that is asset related. If we purchase the items, then that we can actually capture it against costs. I'm not going to deal with that side of this in this video. Just wanted to let you know. Okay, so what we then basically do, and I'll just explain this in a bit of a T account visual. Okay, so if we then create a supply invoice, what are we trying to do here? Eventually, we're trying to create we're trying to create that entry where you're saying there's a depreciation charge coming through every month, and there's an accumulated depreciation charge coming through in the corresponding entry. Okay, so how do we deal with this through something like supplier invoice. Okay. So firstly, I've simulated here a supply invoice. So if I just zoom in, you'll see that this is a supply invoice that's issued to that asset supplier. Okay. And here I've got two lines that are basically going to be created. Okay. So I want to show you how this helps you also to flag your items, and you're going to be able to auto generate a, a asset register from this. Okay. So the firstly, this is done on the first period of this database's open financial year, which is in March 2024. Most people always debate: is it on the first day of the month, the last day of the month? I think it's open for debate. You can kind of like say, well, once I'm in the month, I'm going to capture the depreciation, or no, I want to capture on the last day of the month. That's not neither here or there, in my opinion. It's not such a massive thing. Okay, so I've simulated two line items here. So I want to show you the first line item is calculating, and it's processing to the depreciation item that has been created. And in the description, that's always nice. That description helps you in your trial balance, in your GL actually. It goes and places this in your GL as a description, and it says boardroom table, because this is furniture and fittings. It says depreciation for 2024-03. That's always a nice flag to keep stable. And then it says F001. So I've placed the actual item number F, in this case 001, I've placed in the description so I can see it in my GL, but I've also placed it in the unit of measure, which goes and sits in my history lines table. Now that's always nice, because now if I want to go and mine out that data, I've got that flag and I've got that ability to recon up to asset level. Okay, cool. Now you'll see the important part. I've created a minus quantity over here. So that's minus, which means I'm reducing my asset, because remember, accumulated depreciation is a negative asset. It needs to go and sit on the credit side of my assets. Okay, so to reduce my actual cost that I purchased that asset for. So that's quite important, because what happens over here, a supply invoice as a rule basically takes a line item and it goes and credits it to my supply control account, credit. So this is just a T account simulation, and it debits whatever else you've basically created here. But now if I do a negative, I'm actually swapping this around. I'm saying, no, no, no. I'm creating a negative supply invoice line. So that means a debit to my supply control account and a credit to my other line item over here, which on the actual integration group I've placed, if I use this, it must go to this account. In my Pastel, I showed you in the setup, that was account number 62, I think it was 50 or 6350. Let's just go down to that specific line just to show you how basically it knows to go there. Yeah, 63500020. It's because this item that I've created, I've linked to that specific grouping. And you'll see if I call it up, furniture and fittings has been linked to that item grouping. So that's where it will be uh, debited or credited to. In this case, because I've created a negative, it will be debited here, and the corresponding reverse will also happen on this specific this line. Then I've created, because I don't want to create a supplier that I need to pay. That's not depreciation. Depreciation is not an actual cost, right? It's not something I have to pay for now. It is a fictional cost that happens just because of the fact that the asset depreciates. So I've created a secondary line here, which takes it to my income statement, to the actual income statement depreciation account. And because that's positive, what will happen is the following: the credit will go here and a debit will go to my depreciation, which means this basically impact on my supply control account is now zero. So there's no actual impact on my control account, my asset control account. You can also see it here at the bottom. But there is now the exact thing I wanted to happen in my accumulated depreciation. I wanted a credit and my debit to depreciation. All right. Now I can obviously now really scale this up, because this can become quite cumbersome. I'm going to have to type this by hand. So that's where something like my suppliers helps a lot. So this is my suppliers that plugs into any Pastel database. And what happens here is, if I then go and create a supply invoice, and I go and I say, give me my asset supply control account. And I say depreciation, then I'm going to simulate this for 2024-03 and change that to, let's make it the 31st of March. I actually like that a little bit more. Yeah, and just say there is a zero payment date. Doesn't really matter. It's just the ability to set the payment term. But this obviously, it's because we're using the supply module. Yes, there's a payment term, but it doesn't really apply here. But now you'll see here at the top the templates that we've loaded. We've actually loaded a recurring depreciation over here. And once we hit that, it actually is going to load a very long um, uh, 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 um, a, a invoice for us, which is just going to be a negative and a positive of every single line item. So there, for instance, I've created the 3 laptops that's inside of this database, and I've created the amount of furnitures and fittings that are inside of the whole asset register. So there are 13 pieces within this demo database, and that you can obviously mine out of your own asset, out of your own trial balance. I'll show you the way that I saw is I just went into my inventory valuation. I remember, as I said, we're creating the ability to view a asset register through items because items has the ability to keep a very long history, and it is very detailed. It says, very small quantities can move up and down. So you've got this nice history that's there and the ability to see everything within it. So there you can see PPE, and here you can see there are 13 furniture and fitting items adding to 29,000. And there's computers, there are 3 adding to 39,000. If I were to drill into this, this goes into the history lines database. I'll just drill into that 39,000. It'll show you the items that were purchased. That is a quotation. So these are the items that are purchased on PN 100 or 00031, and you can see there 13,000 for each of them, and that's why we've got 13,000 being the cost amount that we're going to be creating this specific items for, right? And so we're going to create it for these specific line items. Okay. All right. So once we've done this part of it, we can actually now create the corresponding layer. Okay. So now I can see it's giving me some red dots here. It just means I've accidentally didn't capture the correct item code here. So I'm just going to show you how that is fixed. So I'm going to quickly just place my cursor over there, select that cell, and just go for that accumulated depreciation. You'll see it's the same one over here. It's the same one I showed you in Pastel. I'm just going to copy and paste it straight over here. Just highlight all of these cells like that and paste them. Now it is actually going to just paste over that for me. All right, so it's now doing the auto filling part for me. So I'm rather going to do it in the template. So let me quickly open our template. It's not open yet. Let's go there. Okay, here it is, and I'm just going to place it in here. That is our template environment at the back end of each of my suppliers. Just how we load. There we go. And the reason why it doesn't take this is actually because it's got this slash in it, which it doesn't like. So let me quickly fix that as well. Let's go for a find replace. Okay. And we just say replace that with nothing. Replace all. Okay. And that's fine. I'm just going to save it. Okay. So let's bring that in again. That just means load for me the new templates. I'll clear this out for us and now just bring in depreciation. So you can see now that those red dots are gone. So what now? From here, basically it's saying, well, I've got a 0 impact on my asset, but I've got the impacts of my credit to my balance sheet because of this negative supplier invoice, and the debit to my depreciation account, which is going to be just the two of these line items just above it, quantity times price per unit, 391, just 1 times the same 391. Once I process this, process and clear, I'll just show you how it's going to now create a little text file. It's also going to say that it's generated for me. And if I go back into my Pastel, I just go and I import it. Batch, import A5. Okay, and I'm going to go into my demo environment. Here we go, supply invoice, and there's that asset control open process. So it says it's imported something for me. Let's go and have a look. It's this last one. These were just two examples. Um, so here we go. You'll see all of this has now been imported. All right. So what I can now do, it says I've got a document that looks like this. So I'm just going to take this one. This was just a sample. I'll delete this specific document. And the other one, this was just a sample, delete it, and delete yes. Okay, and now I've got only one left with info on it, and I say batch update. Do you want to update this? Do you want to continue? Yes. Okay, I don't want to print it. Do you want to at least documents not printed? That's fine. Update. Okay, so there we've got a detailed listing that's gone through, and if I now view my inventory, you'll actually see there's now inventory here that's starting to create the depreciation charges. What I quite like about it, you can now start seeing computer equipment has now been depreciated 0.09 of this 3 units have now been depreciated, which really helps us to to basically keep track of what is the net value. So let's also go to balances. Let's do inventory valuation, and just do everything. Okay, and now you'll see you actually have a negative value here on the accumulated depreciation. Now this works. It still keeps intact that rule that you shouldn't go below zero because we're using the supply module. So you don't have that risk of items being sold off below zero, or into negative. So you're keeping that rule intact, but you've got the ability to keep a nice track record of my actual asset register over here on a very detailed basis. Okay, guys, I hope that helps you to see how you can use your item module in Pastel to to enhance it and also make it a asset register. Okay, guys, have a great day. Bye.